Okay, and we are recording. We're live. So we have Harlem Heck. I'm here, Doug Marola, Education Forensics, talking about The Last Dance. The first topic I had on the list was top six of the six teams. Now I'm older than you are by a little bit, not a ton, but old enough to have a special place for the first three teams. And Zach Lowe had brought this up on his podcast, but that 1992 team that beat Portland, those Trailblazers were stacked. And that Bulls team had to go through a tough run as well with Cleveland in the mix, who were fantastic. And so, in my opinion, you have the 1992. Tell me where if I'm wrong. The 1992 team, in going through the Cavs and the Trailblazers, showed that it was arguably the best one because their path was hardest. The other thing that was brought up, maybe a close second, is 1998 because of the toughness of the Jazz having to go through the Shaq and Kobe Lakers, the Akeem Olajuwon Rockets to get to the finals. The Jazz did it, and then the Bulls beat them. But if I had to pick one, you've watched the whole series. Which one of the six teams, in your opinion, is the best one? I say 92. Maybe I'm biased, but that Trailblazers team, if you go look at it, is so good and has basically no weaknesses with Clifford Robinson and Danny Ainge off the bench that I don't think any other club did everything that they did.
I like the '96 team.
The one that
with Rodman,
uh-huh.
with Ron Harper,
mm-hmm.
Jordan Pippen, of course, and
mm-hmm.
the three-headed center.
Yeah.
That's the team. I don't know if it was the first. If it was 90 in '96, did they win the 72 games?
Yeah.
Or was it next season?
I think it was the first season back after baseball. They go 72-10.
That's the team. Even though historically, they said the NBA was weak then. That's why they got all those wins. But I just think with Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman playing defense, and Ron Harper being long, their length was just they can switch. Everybody can switch and play defense. And then they had Kukoc coming off the bench, which he served them perfect because he had no pressure, just come in and do his thing. I think that was the best team. If I would have put what Jordan team would I put up against anyone all time, it'll be that team. They just can switch. Everybody can guard.
And also the age. That's the youngest of the last three. And I was talking with Isaiah the other day about that Seattle team. Now, I remember thinking this might be the team that takes out Chicago because Seattle was so good. I know Chicago won 72 games, but the rap was they did it because the Grizzlies had come into the league.
Right.
And the other expansion franchise, the Raptors. I believe that's when they came in. I believe they're brand new teams. And so they rack up, every game against that club is a free win. No two ways about it. So.
But they lost to the Raptors twice.
I know. Damon Stoudemire went crazy when he played the Bulls. It was like someone had turned him into Superman when they played. I remember that.
Mighty Mouse.
Mighty Mouse, yeah. That he had a legit career, but it didn't quite that Toronto franchise. If he had not demanded basically that he get sent to his hometown Portland Trailblazers, and they'd kept Vince Carter, McGrady. I know we're getting off topic, but Stoudemire, Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, all together. Imagine them together for 10 years. That changes the entire Eastern Conference at the very least. Of the NBA, but that Seattle team in '96, I honestly thought they had a chance. And when you look at them, Detlef Schrempf, Derek McKee, Peyton, Sean Kemp, the Bulls, Nate McMillan off the bench, they did not have an answer. Detlef Schrempf, they didn't have an answer for Sean Kemp. Pippen tried. The other Rodman tried, but Kemp did basically whatever he felt like. that series. The problem is the Bulls go 3-0, which I had forgotten about actually until I watched the series again. And so
Yeah,
that team devastated what arguably I, at the time in 1996, age 24, thought would be the team to take down the Bull dynasty. So maybe you have a point.
yeah, I think that was the best. The '93 team was awesome too, when they beat Barkley in the finals.
Yeah. There was an interview with Barkley, and it was so close that that John Paxson shot, the Bulls stopped Phoenix. They had 2 defensive stops in a row and scored in order for Paxson to hit that shot. And that's the part that as Barkley was going through it, I had forgotten about. And Barkley brought up a great point when talking about eras, because he said, he was asked, does it bother you that the players have all this freedom to move and stuff? And you fought for that when you were a player in the 80s and the 90s. And he said, what bothers me and what bothers him and what bothers his peers is that these players have movement and they try to build super teams so they don't have to compete. And he has a really good point, because those teams, the Phoenix teams, those were knockdown, drag out battles. Same thing with the Blazers, right? The Western Conference with Seattle, Houston, Phoenix from 92 to about 97 and the Jazz was, the competition was fantastic. Now it's, let me build a super team so we can dominate the NBA. And Barkley had a really good point about that.
Right. Yeah, I heard him say that, and it's the truth. I saw Paul Pierce said that he doesn't have LeBron in his top 5 or top 10, something like that. And they asked him why. He said, "Well, he never built a team. He never stuck out with his guys, developed players, and went and won something. He moved to the Heat, where he got 2 other superstars. Then he went back to Cleveland when they had already Kyrie, and traded and had the number 1 pick, traded that for Kevin Love.
Mm-hmm.
And then now goes to LA, fakes an injury when they were out. Now trades everyone for Anthony Davis.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're trying to maneuver to get another player. They wanted to sign Kawhi. He said no, but now they try to trade for someone else. It's like that's how he wins his championships.
Yes. Okay. And I can see a lot of that. The only flaw is he was with that first run through with Cleveland was him there. He was how long was he there before he went to Miami?
Yeah, 7, 8 years, something
7,
like
8
that.
years, right? So that's a long time to expect him to stay. And that's the only flaw. But then again, he ruined it with the decision, capital D decision. And then let me go build a super team with Wade, Bosh, and LeBron in Miami. That left a bad taste in everybody's mouth.
Yeah, and then what? He goes to 8 straight finals in the East. It's because his teams are stacked.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? You have the West scratching and clawing, trying to figure it out. And then in the East, it's okay, whatever team LeBron James is on and has built, because he's the general manager, that's how it'll happen. So do you think that that era, I think, I'm going to put my cards on the table. I think that era was better. The only flaw in that era is the scoring, right? You'll see, at the end of 3 quarters, it's 68-74 Chicago Bulls ahead of, Team X. And I didn't notice it at the time at how low scoring it was. I mean, I knew it because of the bad boys in Detroit slowing everything down. Then you've got the Knicks copying that, slowing things down. You have the czar of the telestrator, Mike Fratello, running slow time in Cleveland as their coach, which was the smart play as a coach because he didn't have a lot to work with. But I wished those teams had scored more because it's exciting, but I think now it's watered down. I think defensive rules have made it less fun to watch. Everybody is scoring 80 gazillion points a game. I just think it's weaker. I don't think it's nostalgia talking. I like that era better. The competition was better. Even with the documentary, which I enjoyed immensely, I still think I think it also showed a better era of basketball.
I think the players back then were also more fundamentally sound. So
Probably.
you didn't get this one-on-one deal that you see with Harden and Westbrook.
Mm-hmm.
Like the players who did that stood out. Like
But they could
you
play
know,
zone now. How do guys get away? How does Harden get away with doing his one-on-one thing
well,
with zone defense allowed?
well, you play zone defense to cover the basket, but he's shooting it from 30 feet out. It's always one-on-one out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it has to be.
The one-on-one or somebody comes to double team, you still have somebody open.
Yeah, just because you have, I mean, I remember the Suns in '93 were seen as a high scoring team. And even with that, it was, I mean, you had Barkley scoring 27 points a night, and Marley and Kevin Johnson pretty much scored 20 points a night just because he was so fast and the league didn't have an answer for him. And he could pass and he never got tired. So, you know, they were a high octane team at the time. Nowadays, looking at the numbers, they wouldn't be considered a high score team, but they were fun to watch because they scored so many points.
The 7 seconds or less Phoenix Suns will be 25th in pace and scoring in today's game.
That's wild. Are you serious?
Because it's just like it's no balance. Nowadays, it's all about it's the metrics, how they think. Oh,
Right.
they want 123-point shots. They want your team. You want your team to shoot 123s a game. 123s because if your team averages 30%, that's 108 points. So it's all about shots and possessions, and just shoot.
Which is why the scores are so high. If everybody is doing that, then every game is going to be 119 loss. You scored 119, you lose, and the other team scores 126, which is what you see now.
If you got 120 shots, 123s, and you shoot 40%, that's 120 points.
Yeah.
And that's what they want. It's like, well, you know, the thing that makes it ugly is that it's nice when Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and Klay Thompson are shooting the threes. But then when Philly with Embiid, Tobias Harris, Jimmy Butler last year, and these guys, it's not going to look good. It's
Right.
bad basketball.
Right. Yeah, and you have a team like Philly that could do. They're good, and I always think they could do better. But I'm watching Joel Embiid loft threes. Okay, at least Ben Simmons has the common sense and decency not to loft threes, and he's still amazing. And all anyone ever says is they complain about Simmons not lofting threes. It's not his game. There are actually other things to do.
Everyone, the whole thing is, oh, he doesn't shoot threes. Yeah, that's not his game. He's great at his game, transition, passing, getting to the basket. No, he doesn't shoot threes.
Right. And the guy's amazing. And they're like, oh, he doesn't shoot threes. Trade him and keep Embiid, which I would do the total opposite. I'd keep Ben Simmons and build a team around him.
You could keep Ben Simmons and get 3-point shooters if that's what you want.
Yeah, get 3 Steve Kerrs, right? They had one in JJ Redick, right? They had people. There's more where that came from, and do that. But so going back to, if you had to say better or worse, the Last Dance era, better or worse than now?
I would say, well, the era in itself.
Mm-hmm. Let's say 90 to 98.
I think it was a better era. Yeah, it was a better era. It was more competitive. Like the Western Conference was really stacked. Like 4 or 5 teams could come out. You couldn't predict it.
Right.
I mean, look at after '93 when Jordan leaves, the Suns were favored to go back and win it the next year. I think they lost in the second round.
Mm-hmm. And then I think
And
they lost in the second round. I have to check, but then the 95 and 6, I think they lost in the Western Conference Finals. I think those Suns teams were still good, and everybody knew that whoever won with Jordan out in '95, whoever won the West was going to win the title.
I think in the second Houston year, the Suns lost in the second round to Houston, and the Suns were up 3-1. 3-1 with home court, and Houston came back to win.
Right.
And I remember that because I remember Phoenix had a chance. They could have won 2 straight, but they never made it back.
Right, and that's when you have Rudy Tomjanovich. Never underestimate the heart of a champion going through all that stuff, because Houston wasn't supposed to do that, but they were. But they have those two. They've got those 2 titles. Drexler got his with the second one. The other thing with the eras is now with, and some of it is probably my age, but with social media and the metrics, it just seems to be everybody is talking about, acting on, focused on everything except basketball. Again, maybe I'm an old crotchety guy screaming at the kids to get off his lawn, but it really seems to be a distraction. I can only imagine. Think about all the shenanigans going on that mentioned in The Last Dance. And had there been Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever, Facebook, during that era, it would have been just monstrous. It would have been insane. The rumor mill and all the chaos that would have ensued.
Yeah, it's like players now do get scrutinized more because of all the access that they got, but all the access that they give, because look how Kawhi Leonard plays his career. He has no social media.
I was just going to ask you, does he even have an Instagram or Twitter account?
No, he doesn't have any social media. And he hardly does interviews. He just, it's all about basketball, which is his brand is basketball, which is what Michael Jordan said in the documentary. You heard he said, if I was averaging 2 points a game, you think Nike and all these people care about me? My brand is basketball. What I do on the court, that brings everything else. And that's lost in today's game with today's players. With everything is with social media. They build their brand. They care about their brand, and they forget that they have a job, in how they perform on the court is their brand.
Yeah, I'm already, it's been 2 or 3 years of this where I'm quote unquote building my brand. And the guy, whoever's playing small forward for the Memphis Grizzlies these days is working on his brand.
Right.
I don't care about his brand, and the Grizzlies are terrible.
You start caring about somebody's brand when they're winning.
Right. Right. And that's the thing that I think that that I know it wasn't the point of the documentary, but it distilled the basketball material was so front and center that you couldn't help but notice that the secondary things, right? The tragedy with Jordan's father, him going to play baseball, the gambling stuff, the hatred for Isaiah Thomas, which is very strange, in my opinion. But that other stuff was tangential. Like, it came up, but it was seen as a big deal because it was something else other than basketball, because they would go into that and then slide back into the basketball stuff, where now it's who said what about who on Instagram, or who tweeted
that takes
this.
on a life of his own.
Right. And the basketball stuff was so much of just basically what was on your plate that I think it unintentionally showed that, and that the difference in, eras is so stark that you've got, I think, a superiority just because of the focus that's going on now, or that was going on then as opposed to now.
Yeah, it was like you heard him a couple of times, even when they brought up the thing with the but he didn't donate or he didn't endorse
Mm-hmm. The political candidate, yeah.
right. He goes, I didn't see myself as an activist or anything else. I saw myself as a basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
And all I wanted to do was play basketball.
Right.
And I think that, nowadays they put so much pressure on people to be woke and
Mm-hmm.
to speak out. And you can't even push back and say, I don't want to speak out.
Right.
I just want to be left alone. Why do I have to do this?
Right.
Even if I'm not comfortable with it.
Right. Why do I have to have an opinion on everything? Even your man's LeBron the other day, hashtag stay woke with one of
Mm-hmm.
his tweets. Like I couldn't believe like that's a punchline. Nobody tweets that seriously. Like, oh, I'm woke and I get it and I'm politically active and I'm moving the needle. Like stay woke is kind of like an internet punchline, like, oh, look at this guy. And this is
Yeah,
LeBron James, who's fantastic and an
but look,
amazing player.
but look what happens. He says that we're getting hunted and all this, right? And then it comes out that the guy who got shot was robbing homes.
Right.
They have him on camera. It was people. The whole neighborhood was on watch because somebody who fit his description was burglarizing,
Mm-hmm.
which led to everyone being alert and looking out. And they saw this guy. And they caught their burglar.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what happens. I mean, should he have died? No, but I don't know what happened in the altercation that led to it. I know they did call the police.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like they just shot first.
You know, you just made zillions of internet enemies by not
Right,
staying woke with your comments. That's
right.
the world we're in.
Well, that what I was getting at is you jump to conclusions. You make this tweet and this post. We're getting hunted. Blah blah blah. Now what? Now the media and everyone is too scared to throw egg on LeBron's face, and they're just gonna let it slide.
Right.
No one's gonna call him out like, look what you did. Only Whitlock calls him out,
Right.
but
Right.
no one else calls him out. Like, this is why you need to keep your mouth shut and
Mm-hmm.
wait and get all the facts and then make an opinion.
Right. And I couldn't stand Jordan when he was doing his thing because I grew up and I'm an actual Knicks fan, which is again now kind of a funny thing to think about
Mm-hmm.
how, how many me and about 17 other people are actual Knicks fans. But the fact that he wasn't going to endorse like no, I'm not going to I'm not going to jump in the political arena because I play basketball doesn't necessarily give me an opinion. That kind of internal wiring, that internal gyroscope to know that his basketball life was the thing that made him who he um, was pretty intense. Even Barkley, who has unorthodox, more conservative political opinions, he said his stuff. Remember, I'm not a role model, all that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And he's like, he even mentioned to Zach Lowe on the podcast the other night, like, okay, both parties are a joke. But that's all of that stuff back then was not the normal thing, and it was talked about and it flared up and then it went back to the sports stuff. It really was kind of nostalgic to see that when in watching the documentary, all the stuff that was how it was played at the time.
And even when the comment where, oh, Republicans buy sneakers too, he didn't say that to the media publicly. That was he said it was a joke. He said on the team bus, and apparently Horace Grant told the writer he said this, and it blew up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's he was real conscious of you know basically to stay in his lane, and his lane was basketball.
Right. Why do you think the bad feeling and hate to Isaiah Thomas is so strong? Isaiah Thomas was great. When you hear him talk, he's one of these more mild-mannered guys. I've never heard him raise his voice, which, again, Isaiah Thomas has been in the public spotlight since the early 1980s when he won a title at Indiana under Bobby Knight, of all people. If he were such a monster, he plays for Bobby Knight, wins, right? And Bobby Knight was a complete basketball coach dictator. A fantastic coach, but not a soft person. Then he goes, plays under Chuck Daly. Again, one of these more harder-edged guys who was not a game player and was not afraid to tell you what was going on to your face. Chuck Daly, he was rugged. And so now this comes out and there's all this, keep him off the dream team, the hatred for Isaiah Thomas. Am I missing something? I could see hatred toward Bill Laimbeer or maybe Rick Mahorn or, or even Rodman, who got paid in those early days to be an annoyance. Why Isaiah Thomas? It just doesn't seem to fit.
Well, he was the leader of that team. And apparently in the All-Star game, in Michael's first All-Star game, Isaiah Thomas orchestrated a not pass Michael the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't pass Michael the ball. So, Michael's shown that he holds grudges. And he doesn't forget. He doesn't forgive and forget.
Mm-hmm.
So he just doesn't like the guy.
I don't know. It just seems so. I mean, I heard Isaiah Thomas on an interview the other day, and here's a guy, he's kind of a politician, right? He talks nicely and stuff like that, but you just don't hear. He wasn't a trash talker. When they talk about top trash talk of the era, they talk about Reggie Miller, Gary Payton, Larry Bird. There's another one. There's another name or two that come up on the list, and and Jordan as trash, but not Isaiah. No one's like, oh, Isaiah. He and his team knocked you on the floor and then stomped on your face and put in your face with the trash talk. It's just not there. I know he's the leader. I mean, I get it. I watched those games, but man, maybe some of it is Jordan holding a grudge, and because he was the king of the universe and holding grudges, both real and fake, as we saw with LeBradford Smith.
So Isaiah Thomas was on Whitlock's show last night, and he said, he was. I think his record is 37-5 against head-to-head against Michael Jordan, and he goes, really? I think that's the reason.
Are those regular season record, or is that just the total record?
No, with postseason is like 37-15, something like that.
Right.
Head to head, and he goes, if there's something that I did to him, it's that.
Yeah.
Like my teams beat his team.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. For 5 years.
When they swept us, we were done already. He said we were on our last legs. It was just a matter of time. If it wasn't them, it was going to be somebody else that got us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you have, that makes sense because 84, 85 season through 1989, 1990, Detroit won the series. And those early years, I'd bet that Detroit won 90% of the head-to-head matchups in the regular season. And they played a lot those days. Those conference teams played each other six times. So 4-2, 5-1, 6-0, especially the early days when Detroit was building a championship club, and Chicago was rolling out Ennis Watley and Orlando Woolridge and a lot of other guys that nobody except me and you and a couple other NBA fans know. So I guess so. And then it becomes the mother of all grudges. That's 5 years of getting your ass kicked. It's gonna be the deal.
And I think they used to play Michael with, okay, who cares if you have 50? Your team scores 75.
Right.
So, all right, take your 50, you still lose. Like, that's how they played him early on. They're like, okay, he's going to get all his points and whatever, but all these other guys aren't going to get anything.
Yeah, because you had the chatter at the time was very clear, especially before they won anything, was, oh, it's a one-man team. We don't really need to worry about that. Let Jordan score 30 to 50. Who cares? We know we've got the win. We've got it in the bag. And young people today are, because I work with high schoolers, they are shocked. The ones who understand and follow basketball, not the fair weather fans, but they're shocked to hear that Boston swept that series in '86. I'm like, yeah, Jordan went bananas. I remember it, but they got swept. They were 0-3. They had no shot. That 63-point game was the
Mm-hmm.
close game, and he went wild in a close loss. And people nowadays are surprised because they think, oh, megawatt star Air Jordan got his own shoe. He must therefore be a great player, because that's what they see now with the media and the internet and social media ramming all of these people in young kids' faces all the time on their phones. So I don't know how that would play out now.
I don't know. I mean, Jordan in the social media age. Well, you know, I just think it would have been like the perfect combination, because for him to sell that many shoes and be that big of a quote unquote brand
Mm-hmm.
without social media. Imagine now that all these companies endorsing him are also pumping him on social media,
Mm-hmm.
and he has all these media personnel and everybody coaching him on what to do and say. It'll be astronomical.
Yeah, that's and the fact that he seems like he's kind of a conservative guy, it would
Right.
send the kind of social justice people into fits, because he's not going to play that game, because you have to be kind of weak, like like Whitlock said the other day, the feminized culture we're in.
Hmm.
That was a really good point that Whitlock brought up. Whether you like the guy or not, it's a really good point that today's feminized culture you have in now this Last Dance showing Michael Jordan with the cigars, messing with his own teammates, boot on the throat if you're a punk,
Right.
all this kind of stuff. That's triggering
Right.
today. And
Bullying.
Jordan,
See, they keep calling him a bully, a bully. He didn't beat people up. He didn't, like, what is bullying now?
right?
And he even said, if you come in here, you're not ready to play, or you're not ready to compete, and I have to get in you, I'll get in you.
And they didn't use bullying then. Some of us are old enough to remember what the deal was, because in June of '91, when they first win, I had just finished freshman year at University of Iowa. I remember the entire thing, and at no point was this, oh, Jordan is a bully thing out there. That's a word they're using now. They didn't use it then. They use all kinds of euphemisms: hard-edged, strong-willed,
Hmm.
grudge, aloof, cold, right? All this kind of stuff. But they didn't say, oh, Jordan is a bully. Even with the fight with Steve Kerr, which did make the news, it wasn't like, oh, Jordan is pushing Steve Kerr around and all this kind of stuff. It was seen as very maybe extreme, but extreme competitiveness.
Right, but now it's like everybody has feelings of hurt. There were people crying for Steve Kerr. Oh, and for Scott Burrell. I can't believe Jordan treats Scott Burrell that way.
Are you serious? Where'd you see this
Yeah,
nonsense?
on Instagram.
No. What, like Steve Kerr and Scott Burrell can't handle themselves? They made it to the pinnacle. They made it to the top of the heap in the NBA. You can't be soft and
Yeah,
do that. You need to cry for those people. That's ridiculous.
you see the two things when you look at it. You heard Michael say, "I never asked these guys to do something I'm not willing to do."
Mm-hmm.
And then Will Perdue said, "Yeah, he was hard. He was a jerk. He was this. He was that. But he took us to the top."
Yeah, and it was, Will Perdue was still the butt of jokes in my house because he was Will Vanderbilt. Because Jordan said, you're not worthy of being named after a Big Ten school. So yeah. So Will Perdue had gone to Vanderbilt, right? And Jordan called him Will Vanderbilt. Nah, you're not worthy of Big Ten. I mean, stuff like that. That came out then. And again, no one was like, oh, he's so bully. He's such a bully, such a meanie. Let's cry a little bit. Let's pour one out and shed a tear for Will Perdue because he's getting pushed around. It was if you're going to be, like Jordan said, if you're going to be on the boat, on the ship with me and I'm steering it, okay, but this is how it's going to go. And that's another thing, that his effort level, like he never, it's true, he didn't ask people to do things that he didn't, practice more than he did, or push harder than he did.
You take all the charges, you play defense, I'm
Right.
gonna score.
Right.
Like, it wasn't like that. It was
Yeah.
it was all right, let's do this.
Well, every year you had the battle between steals. Once Alvin Robertson retired and slowed down, the battle for who's going to lead the league in steals was between Stockton and Jordan. Every year, Jordan played tight D. He would gamble. It was not, his defensive efforts were always very, very good, and I think that made him bulletproof a lot. Again, I hated it at the time because the Bulls would roll into New York or play the Knicks and take him down. But it was, here's a guy who practiced what he preached. And so that's, maybe Kawhi Leonard is the closest in terms of demeanor and style, without the maniacal competitiveness, to some degree, to today. Because everybody now, it just seems to be that that's not in style, kind of the way Jordan was.
Well, I think Kawhi is the closest, because you don't see him slapping them fives with all these other players, hugging them. You don't see him going to the like LeBron's banana boat, and he just,
that was an embarrassment. Oh no.
And look, he used the Lakers and LeBron. He told them, just to get the deal from the Clippers. Like, there was no way he wanted to play with him. He wants to beat him. Like,
right.
And that's what's missing in the NBA today.
Right.
That, and like, the big man is useless.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not useless. It's useless because they're shooting threes.
Right.
Like what we said earlier with
Embiid.
With Embiid. Embiid takes 7 threes a game, goes 1 or 2 for 7. Well, he could go 5 or 6 of 7 if he was just to take layups.
Right. Yeah, because, well, no one can stop him, because no one's focused on big guys. No one in the NBA can stop Joel Embiid if he's within 7 feet of the basket. It's just not happening.
5 times 2 is greater than 2 times 3.
That's math. I think I read about that somewhere.
And then it's just like how we have the conversation in baseball about putting the ball in play. When a big man gets the ball down low, you can foul, the other person can foul, you get an and one, or you put them in the penalty, and you get your 3 points anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then if that person's in foul trouble, next time down, once you get positioned too low, they don't even guard you. You get the free 2 points because they don't want to foul you, or in the penalty, or pick up another foul. So now the game just gets easier.
Right.
And this is the analytics and metrics don't say this.
I'm tired of analytics and metrics to the fullest. Actually, one of the podcasts next with Isaiah is we have we're going to focus to some degree on that, where it's the players who the analytics, the metrics say they're great and they're really not, and then vice versa. The ones who say, because you're the best at this, right? We joke about it now, but I've mentioned players, because I don't look at the analytics, because I was an original Bill James analytics guy, and now they've completely run off the rails and lost complete control of the script, and it's nuts. But I'll mention a player to you, and you're like, oh, the analytics says he's terrible. And
right,
it's always shocking to me.
I told you about Michael Jordan's plus minus. The analytics say that Michael Jordan sucked because his plus minus is low. But wait a minute, like, really? Because your team loses and you're on the floor, you give up more points and you're playing over minutes, so it's your fault.
Right.
The plus minus.
Right. And that's the thing with which brings up the ridiculous idea of load management. You look at those guys back then. Everyone from Jeff Hornacek to Stockton, Karl Malone, Michael Jordan. And it doesn't even need to be the top names. Steve Kerr played in all the games. Steve Kerr did what Steve Kerr got paid to do and played in all the games. They all played. And then they went through. The only difference was the first series, instead of best 4 out of 7, was best 3 out of 5. That was the only difference. And they played
which I
all
think
the
made
games.
that more exciting.
Yes, they should go back to that. That was fun. But in the thirst for more revenue and all kinds of nonsense, they made it best out of 7, which is a mistake. But those guys played in all the games all the time. And I just think someone saying to Jordan, well, it's a Wednesday night in March. We're playing the Clippers, right? We're going to let Danny Manning and Loy Vaught and Gary Grant, we're going to let them go crazy today. And Pooh Richardson, we're going to let them score at will. You take a seat and rest. We're going to load manage you, and we're going to lose. But this way, in June and late May, you'll be fresh. That's a bastardization of basketball. And that's where we are today.
Well, they have these things that they call them scheduled losses. And
What?
so scheduled losses on the road the second night of a back-to-back. Team just expect to lose that one.
So they sit their stars.
Sit their stars, or they know the stars aren't going to show up because it's known that that's a scheduled loss. And I'm thinking I think it was in after they lost with the Pippen migraine, Michael Jordan never lost 3 straight games after that. Never lost 3 straight games after that.
That's intense. That's amazing. And not only that, but let's say that second game back-to-back overnight on the road is in Sacramento, which is an atrocious franchise, right? And back 20 years ago they had White Chocolate and Vlade and those guys, and they put on a show. It was great. They got robbed, but they should have made the finals that year. That's another topic. So they've been terrible for 15 years. But though you bring your son or daughter to the game, or your family, let's go watch the Kings play, right? Let's go watch some pro basketball. These guys can put on a show. And no one legit is playing. To me, that will always bother me. This load management, scheduled loss stuff is just ridiculous. And Jalen Rose, to his credit, he doesn't like it. I'm always happy to hear him talk against it. And to his credit, LeBron James, for all of his social media foolishness, LeBron plays in all the games. LeBron plays.
Yeah, he was going to that load management thing. He was trying to, but they told him, you're our biggest star. When you go on the road, people, when you go to Western Conference, people oh, he's coming to once a year. So people who ever going to a game, you're going to go see LeBron.
Right.
And then he's going to sit that one out.
Right.
So
if I'm in Brooklyn,
he got pressure.
Right. If I'm in Brooklyn and that's their one visit, and I'm like, oh, great, I'm going to take the train, I'm going to see LeBron play, and I go buy a ticket because the Lakers are in town, and he's in a suit, I'm pissed. So, but I guess it doesn't seem to matter because they sell the arenas out. The money is flowing like crazy.
Well, they sell the arena out to corporations. It's not to fans anymore.
Right.
Because, the 2 players that I'll pay to go see, well, it's 3 now. These guys play every day and play hard. It's Harden for all his nonsense. He plays 82 games.
Right.
So does Westbrook. Right. Now they're on the same team, so you got to pay 1 ticket.
Right.
And the kid in Milwaukee, Giannis.
Oh, Giannis, yeah. Huh.
Those are the 3 guys that go out there every night and try to. They know that, that game in January on a Tuesday night, that's when they can pad their stats. Yeah,
and that's the thing with the one of the ways that the game has changed, and I brought this up before with Isaiah as well was the comment by Rod Thorne. We're switching gears here a little bit, but the fact that he was unhappy after drafting Jordan because he wasn't 7 feet tall. And
Right.
they actually showed the clip of him saying, "Yeah, it's great. He seems like he's a really good player. We didn't waste the draft pick." He's like, "Yeah, is he 7 feet? No, but that's all right."
Right.
And that sounds now like complete clownish nonsense, like off the charts, kryptonite level idiocy. Like, oh yeah, I just drafted Michael Jordan. It's a damn shame he's not 7 feet tall. Like, what? But it really
They,
shows you the change.
the also thing about those early Jordan was he said, they were down like 12 points going into the fourth quarter, and his team checked out. They're like, oh yeah, tomorrow's another day, and then he's
Mm-hmm.
like, wait a minute, there's another quarter left. Game isn't over.
Right.
What is going on? And like, that's the culture change that they got.
Yeah. Well, like the load management stuff with Jordan getting hurt and coming back at the end of his second season and having a minutes limit. It was like they had told him he needed to wake up and punch his wife in the face. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I'm not going to do that. That's crazy. You're asking me to do the thing that I'd rather die than play
Right.
fewer minutes than normal. And that's they wanted him to load manage, and he was repelled by it. And it's he couldn't believe it, and that really was telling. It's one of the things with all the flaws of Jordan and the cost, kind of like the cost of this extreme intensity. Was the fact that I have to respect the fact that he was not going to go and half step it.
Right.
If they'd had I remember thinking back then, if they'd had a frontline center, not necessarily like a Ewing type, but if they'd had, so even someone like Rick Smits, 14 and 8 every game, 2 blocks, a true 5, a true center, if they would have been even better. I don't know about that. I mean, it's hard to say better than what, better than 6 titles, but that was always kind of like, let's see if we can get a center. Let's hope, they would hope that Stacey King, Will Purdue, Scott Williams, they were hoping that those guys when they were young would be better, but they weren't.
Like even just like Bill Cartwright. I just remember him. He just didn't fit with them. But they won 3 titles with him.
Yeah.
He started.
Yeah. And they say that he did. They say that he did fit. He brought like a veteran presence. He was quiet, but he didn't take any nonsense. He was kind of a stabilizing force. Had been around the league since the late 70s. So yeah, I get it because he's such kind of a clunky player, especially by then. But yeah, 3 titles is hard to argue with. And then you've got Luke Longley with the other 3.
Mm-hmm.
I asked, do you know what the bad feeling is? What's the deal with Longley and Jordan? Why didn't Longley get interviewed? Not even once. Nothing. No clip from the old days. They didn't rerun the tape and have Longley say this. There certainly weren't any interviews with him today. And he was the starting center. I looked it up. He was the starting center. He started 50 to 70 games those last 3 titles, and he was nowhere to be found.
I know he cashed out after he went to Phoenix and signed like a 3-year, $24 million deal.
And then literally retired.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he didn't do the Boris Diaw and go out onto the floor and run around and hope the ball missed him.
No.
He actually, left. He said, "I'm done." I think he left. I think he was out of the league before he was 35. I think he was 32 or 3.
Good for him.
Yeah, well, he got drafted by the Timberwolves. It was like the 4th pick or 5th pick in the draft out of New Mexico, and has 3 rings and a place in basketball history. But they didn't interview him, and I always wondered if there's something going on with that.
Probably him and Michael didn't get along, so
they interviewed Isaiah Thomas.
Isaiah Thomas said that he didn't know it was gonna be like this. He would have declined.
Really? What do you mean,
Yeah.
like this big of a deal?
Well, they just interviewed him, and then they just took clips of the interview and they meshed it in with whatever was going on. So he was like, well, if they were gonna paint me in such a in that light, I would not have accepted it.
That's interesting.
But I think he's just saying that because you know how many eyes on this documentary? People now are knowing who Isaiah Thomas is because he, like you saw that list, he was 31st. And with tons of point guards in front of him, I'm like, how is that possible?
Right. That's why the Chris Broussard link you sent me was so good, saying you kids don't even know how good Isaiah was. 31st? No. That's ridiculous. But this has brought Isaiah back, right? Now people are calling him up or texting him and saying, look, we need to chat. Whereas a year ago, who's looking for Isaiah Thomas?
Like, there's people that think that Kyrie Irving is better than Isaiah Thomas.
No, that's an easy one. That's not even a challenge.
Yeah, you ask these young kids, they'll be like, Kyrie, his handle.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and Kyrie Irving is really, really good, but he's not Isaiah Thomas. Not even close.
The debate is probably going to be Steph Curry, Isaiah Thomas later on.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, because Steph has championships. He changed the game.
Mm-hmm. That's true, right? And Isaiah, it was back then. It was if you think you're going to win by drafting a small point guard, you are mistaken. That's not going to happen, right? There was that comment I mentioned before with, "Oh, too bad Jordan's not 7 feet."
Mm-hmm.
With Isaiah, it was even more pronounced. It's like you can't. That's a nice piece, and Isaiah Thomas is very good, but that's not the championship answer to draft a 6 foot tall point guard. It was even more intense back then when Isaiah got drafted, and he made it happen.
The only thing, well, what I say about Isaiah and Steph Curry doesn't have a moment. In all those championship runs, and there's no Steph Curry game. Like, oh, you remember that game Steph Curry took over?
Right.
Isaiah Thomas has iconic moments, you know, when he sprained his ankle and he came back and I think he scored 48 points or whatever.
Right.
He has his moments. Like, there's no Steph Curry moments.
Yeah, I wonder, and now that we come back to the season, it looks like there's going to be some kind of pro basketball happening. I wonder about, well, and in Golden State, I mean, this year, the season's over for them. It's been over. But, you know, next year they come back. I wonder if they're, you know, going to be the kind of modern day Chicago Bulls winning back-to-back titles again, because that back-to-back stuff it really is that tough. I didn't realize that 3 in a row was as rare as it was when you're thinking Los Angeles, even the Spurs, a team that you and I like. I respect the Spurs a lot. You're a Spurs fan. They didn't ever do back-to-back. Forget about 3 in a row. And that's an amazing franchise. That's an incredibly well-run place. And they didn't forget about 3 in a row. They didn't even do back-to-back. And how tough that is, you know, for the Bulls to do that in a competitive environment against the Knicks, with the Cavaliers, with the stacked top to bottom Trailblazers. That's so rare. It's not even funny. I wonder if Golden State could try to get back to that.
Oh, they have the pieces, because if they'll be healthy, they're gonna get like a top lottery pick. They'll probably trade that and get a real player.
Mm-hmm.
They just got Wiggins.
Oh, right. That's true. Well, he's a guy that maybe in that system and with that franchise becomes a really good piece. Look at them. Look, I always bring that up with moves like that, because Wiggins is seen as sort of kind of a bust. But you have head case, oddball, dyed hair Dennis Rodman. When he went to the Bulls, I remember thinking, you know, on the surface, that's a bizarre stunt. But because they've got a gazillion rings, they've got Jordan and Pippen, Phil Jackson. If ever a team is going to make that work, it's the Bulls. I remember thinking that at the time. I'm like, that's not as crazy as it sounds.
Right. I mean, you know, he was playing better with in that system. Like,
Now, he, he has no pressure. He's not the guy. He's not the number 2. He's not the 3. He just can go out there and just play basketball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And that's the thing where because of all the success around you, Wiggins, who again is not Dennis Rodman in terms of, Dennis Rodman Hall of Famer, but which is a little bit debatable. Dennis Rodman in the Hall of Fame, okay, I'm not angry about it. It is a little bit strange, a guy who scores 4 points a game, even if you're the best rebounder in the history of the game, which again is debatable.
I mean, that his rebound. The thing about the I don't know if they still do it, but back then, if you tip it to yourself, that counts as a rebound. So that counts as 2 rebounds.
Yeah.
You tip it, and then grab it. That's 4 rebounds.
Mm-hmm.
And he would do that routinely.
Yes.
So he was padding his rebounding stats that way. Well, he could have just grabbed it on the first one.
Right. Yeah, because he would tip it to guarantee that the other guy, the other power forward, wasn't getting the rebound. Some of those he could have just grabbed, yeah. Mm-hmm. Because and the game, to Rodman's credit, this is where your metrics come into play. The rebounds per possession. At one point Rodman was grabbing, of all shots taken, 20% of every shot taken, something like that. Even with the stats and the tipping and all that kind of stuff. And it's Rodman has something like 6 or 7 of the top 10 seasons of guys who've done that in the history of the NBA, and he's leading the parade. So, and the game was slower, so there weren't as many opportunities, and he managed to pull it off. Yeah, it's just, I mean, there's a case to be made that he's in the Hall of Fame. It's just, people are like it is now, like anyone with big anything, oh, they're great. Like Kyrie Irving, there are people already talking about, I'm sure there are people talking about how he's a Hall of Fame point guard, and it's just, we're just waiting for him to retire. I don't know about that, but last bit for The Last Dance. What was your overall take on it? Was it? I enjoyed it way. I've mentioned this before. I've enjoyed it way more than I thought I would, because I lived through all that, as did you. I was like, oh man, why am I? Remember, we were talking about it, and I wasn't watching it. I'm like, why would I watch it?
Right.
I saw all of that. Yeah, I remember I watched all of those games on TV live on NBC. But I enjoyed it. Overall, you liked it a lot? You thought it was good stuff?
I really enjoyed it because it's kind of like what Whitlock talked about. It was real masculine, alpha, and this is how it's going down, and this is how you lead. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm a nice guy, let's go out to dinner and this and that, all the teddy bear stuff that LeBron and all these guys do. This was like, he pushed you to the limit, and he demanded you to play the game hard, play the game the right way.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest differences to now, is that kind of very hard-edged, I don't care the cost. I'm gonna win, and I'm gonna play in every game, and if I step on somebody's toes, even on my own team, so be it.
The other thing I noticed about it is, as big of a superstar he was outside off the court, it seemed like in practice and on the court, everything, he was involved with the team. Like they were all one. Mm-hmm. Which I don't. That was one of the things that people criticize Kobe about, or they criticize LeBron and these guys about. It's like, yeah, you're not. They don't feel like you're a part of the team. It seemed like Jordan was part of the team.
Yeah, I saw that too. When they would show film of when they're in practice, he was practicing with the club when they had shirts versus skins, right? You saw what team he was on, mm-hmm. and he was, doing the drills with everybody else. It's not like he was on the phone with his agent checking his stock portfolio while everybody was practicing. Right. He was out there getting his hands dirty with everybody else. And I think you're right. You hear about a lot of the stratification in the team like that. This is the player X is the team star, therefore their rules are different for that guy. Maybe it's just the way it seems, but you have proof that with Jordan it was okay. It's Phil's calling a practice, and I'm going to it. He even mentions that early on, where he's like, "Oh, Phil understands we need some time off." He's like, a lot of other coaches, remember that it's the scene where they're in the golf carts.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of other coaches would have called a shoot around or a practice, and Phil knows to just let us be, that we're not going to learn anything or figure something out today. We need time to do something else. But in that comment, Jordan realizing that if Phil had called a practice, or any other coach, he'd have been at practice. It would have been like, nah, talk to my agent, or I don't feel well, I'm going to load manage this one out.
Right.
It was unsaid that, man, I'm glad I don't have to go to practice and listen to my coach. I can be here playing golf. And it just seemed that's a little bit of, odd to use the word humility with Jordan, but he's recognizing that if those coaches from the old days with the Bulls, if they'd have called a practice, he would have been there.
Well, it goes up to his upbringing. Like we spoke about it, like, 2-parent household. They were blue collar. They worked, but they demanded stuff from him, and liked it or not, he had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Even like you see him, no tattoos, none of that. He was like a conservative guy who with a strong upbringing,
mm-hmm.
and that's how he played and practiced and went about his basketball life.
Right. Yeah, and the only modern player I can think of, well, Zion Williamson is now on the list, unless he went to the tattoo parlor illegally during this novel coronavirus time, is
Right.
Tim Duncan. Somehow Tim Duncan didn't get tatted up, and you've got these guys. Look at someone like J.R. Smith. I don't know where J.R. Smith stops and where the tattoos begin. Like I can't even tell. And and you have Jordan didn't decide as an older player in the mid 90s when everybody was really starting to get going. He didn't do that. He didn't follow the crowd. And it's a much more conservative style, which today, of course, because, they see everything as old and traditional as terrible. He gave them the middle finger and said, no, I'm not doing it. I don't care.
Right.
So, yeah, you're right. Like to mix eras, Jordan's quote unquote brand would be seen as kryptonite today. The ad agency people and the social media weirdos would be like, nah, you can't do that. You need to get some tattoos. You need to, to be disrespectful to everybody, including your coach. Yeah, it's an interesting style, interesting ethos to figure out how that would play off today.
No, I think the old school players had more respect for coaching.
Mm-hmm.
But when you paying these guys, what's the guy's name on Milwaukee?
Giannis?
I don't even know his name. No. Middleton.
Oh, Chris Middleton, yeah.
5 years, $175 million. Is he listening? Why would he listen?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What in what world do you give not even the best player on the team? And let's say Middleton is the second best. A debate, but let's say Chris Middleton is number 2. Now what? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, hey, look, I'm going to try hard. I'm going to see what we can do. And if we lose, whatever, I'm going to get in my private pressurized jet.
Right.
And do whatever I damn please. And if I'm tired, load manage me when we're playing the Kings or when we're playing the Knicks. It's completely gone off. And that's the thing. That kind of stuff now in the NBA, it's just not as good. I don't think it's the two of us, acting like a bunch of old guys crying about how much better it was in the old days. You just didn't have that. All the stuff that we have going on now. It wasn't the case. Mark Eaton, 7'4", but guy basically could block shots, which you'd expect at 7'4", anchored the defense for the Jazz. He played all the games until he couldn't play.
Right.
Mark Eaton retired because his body didn't work anymore. And now, oh, no. Nope. No, you're gonna play this, and we're gonna limit this, and if the fans don't see you play, then so be it. I don't know, man. It's that documentary really showed a lot. I'm probably gonna rewatch it in a bunch of weeks, maybe a month or two. I may sit down and check it out again, see if I get into it again, because it really was like looking through a looking glass into a time warp.
Right. I'm gonna do the same.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to add? Anything to put forth?
No, but I'm gonna leave you a little research for next week, so we can debate this next week.
All right.
LeBron James said that his 2008, the Redeem Team, could beat the Dream Team.
Could beat the Dream Team.
Now, the 2008 team is pretty stacked.
Who's on it?
LeBron, Wade, Kobe, Carmelo Anthony, and a few other guys. I mean,
okay.
So it's pretty stacked. When he said that, I was like, well, let me look at the roster.
Yeah, because I can't remember.
Jason Kidd's on the team. Durant. They have a lot of players, so it wasn't like a landslide that I thought.
Right. Okay, we'll have to look that up.
And also the fact, like, when we think of the Dream Team, we saw the real Dream Team play, so Bird wasn't a factor. It's not like everyone is in their prime.
Right.
If we take them how the Dream Team was to the new team, the Redeem Team,
right,
it's closer.
Okay, so we'll have to look that up. I'll have to check out the roster for that 08 team and see what the deal is, because the Dream Team stuff, I'm glad they talked a lot about the Dream Team in the documentary, because it was a big deal. It was something. It helped ruin Chris Mullin's career, because when Mullin tried to come back after that, half a season at the usual rate, and then he got hurt, and he was never the same.
Right.
Because he played all of the 91-92 season, played 92 Dream Team, goes back with the Warriors, and 40 games in, he goes down, and he never came back to the 25, 5-5 player with ultra crafty moves. That didn't happen again. That was it. So, yeah, that's gonna be interesting stuff. So we'll check that out. We'll talk about that. I have to talk about that next week, because we'll start with that, and then we'll bash all the other new stuff going on that we don't like.
All right, cool. We'll chat along the way and see. Give each other topics.
All right. Cool.
All right,
man. We'll talk
later.
You got it.